Heartless by Marissa Meyer. Chapter 43. Elsie, Lacey, and Tilly sat on the edge of the well sipping from porcelain teacups. They still wore their plain white dresses, though the meadow seemed colder than before and Catherine thought they must be freezing in such flimsy fabric. The oddest thing, though, was that the three girls were now wearing masks. An owl, a raccoon, a fox. The masks were tied to their heads with ribbons, and only the girls' enormous eyes could be seen through circular cutouts. So black and fathomless it was like looking through the holes into nothing. Catherine was grateful when Jess's hand found hers again, lacing their fingers together. It was a strange thing to stare across a peaceful forest glen at three little girls and feel that she'd stepped onto a battlefield. "Hello," said Hannah, with a calmness that was offset by his tense shoulders. "Tilly, Elsie, Lacey." The girls did not move. They held their teacups in one hand and their saucers in the other, their pinky fingers pointing at matching angles. "We've been practicing," said the owl. "We've been drawing," said the raccoon. "We've seen many things," said the fox. They sipped their tea in unison. "I have given you 5 minutes of my time," said Hannah. "Show us, so we might be on our way." It sounded like a script, like a tired conversation he'd recited too many times. The sisters were quiet for a while, their empty eyes gazing. Before Lacey the fox set down her teacup and stood. Her long hair clung to her calves as she stepped away from the well. The silvery ends were sticky with treacle. Jess and Kath released each other's hands so Lacey could pass between, splitting them like an axe into a log. She reached the wall of hedges and pushed her hands into the brush, grabbed and pulled. The leaves and vines fell away, revealing a wall of stone. It was covered in drawings. Some were faded and smeared, while others still glistened from wet ink. The fox stepped back and beckoned them to approach. Kath stepped closer, scanning the array of drawings. A marigold, a mosquito, a menorah, a milk bottle, a branch of mistletoe, mousetraps and mirrors and memory. "See our new work," said Lacey the fox, gesturing to a group of drawings, and Kath noticed that she had Raven's quill tucked behind one ear, dripping ink down the back of her neck. Her fingers were smudged with recent ink as well, though Kath was sure they'd been cleaned before. Catherine followed the girl's gesture and felt the blood drain from her body. The drawing showed two men. One was on the ground, surrounded by a pool of darkness that she assumed was blood. His head had been severed clean from his body. A three-pointed joker's hat lay on the ground beside him. The second man stood in the distance, enormous and cloaked in an executioner's hood. A bloodied axe was in his hand. A memory darted through her thoughts. It was the same ominous shadow that had followed her across the castle's lawn on the night she met Jess. The shadow that always attached itself to Raven. She recoiled, pressing a hand over her mouth. "Why?" she stammered, knowing that Jess was right beside her, alive and well, and Raven was his friend and would never hurt him? Or did she know that? The picture was detailed enough to insert a sliver of doubt into her thoughts. "Why would you draw something so terrible, Kath?" Jess's voice was strained. He wasn't looking at the same drawing. Her gaze followed his, and she saw herself, sitting on a throne, wearing the crown of the Queen of Hearts, and gripping a heart-tipped scepter in one hand. Her expression was cold as stone. Her mouth ran dry. "What is this? It's you," he said. She shook her head. "They're just drawings. Terrible drawings." Beneath that image was another, this one of Hada. He sat at a long table scattered with broken teacups and cracked plates. Rather than surrounded by friends and music and laughter, the chairs around the table were empty. His hair was unkempt, his hat tilted to one side, dark circles beneath his eyes. His smile was crazed. "Why would you show these to us?" Jess growled, his hands tightening into a fist. The fox folded her hands and recited, "One to be a murderer, the other to be martyred, one to be a monarch, the other to go mad. That last one will be me," said Hada. He'd taken off his top hat and was fiddling with the decorative ribbon. Kath didn't think he'd looked at the wall once. Always the same fate, the same warning. "As you'll see, I've not gone mad yet." He said it as if this were proof that the drawings were nothing but harmless whimsies. Kath wanted to believe that, but Hada seemed more shaken than he wanted to admit. They were leaving Hearts, she told herself. She couldn't become the Queen of Hearts once they were gone. Maybe she would become a monarch. Jess wanted her to become the new White Queen after all. Maybe that's what the sisters meant. But there was no mistaking the crown topped with a heart finial in the drawing. "Your future is written on stone, but not in it." Catherine spun around. Elsie the raccoon stood arm's reach away, the expressionless mask and hollow eyes peering up at her. Kath hadn't heard her approach. "It's only an idle warning then, it is a truth," said the raccoon. "But one of many, many, many muchness," said Tilly the owl, her voice like a sad trill. "Eeny meeny miny mo. Choose a door, any door," Elsie continued. "They all lead to this truth. It is a fate, and fate is inevitable." Catherine shook her head. "If they all lead to this, then how can we avoid it?" Tilly tittered. "Time cannot follow you here, so he cannot follow you out. To put it most simply, you mustn't go through a door." The sisters all started to laugh, the sound shrill and bubbling. Kath hated the sound. "Fine, we won't go through any doors," said Hada. "May we go?" "Patience, patience," said Elsie. "Don't lose your head," said Tilly. They turned their heads together and snickered. "We drew your grandmother too a long, long time ago," said Elsie the raccoon, drawing closer to Kath's voluminous skirt. "The first Marchioness of Mock Turtles. Do you wish to see her?" "You mean the Marchioness of Rock Turtle Cove," said Kath, and though she shook her head, she still followed to where Lacey was pointing, and saw a drawing of a beautiful girl surrounded by turtles and lobsters. Her many greats-grandmother, recognizable from a portrait that hung in her father's library. How old were these girls? How long had they been here, drawing the future in the key of M? "We have 1 minute still," said Tilly. Her sisters came to join her, all surrounding Kath and staring up at her. "Won't you tell us a story?" she gulped. "I'm not a good storyteller like my father or grandmother or, I'm sorry, you'll be disappointed." "Then we will tell it," said Tilly. Elsie curtsied. "A gift to take with you through the looking glass. Another truth we've seen," added Lacey. They began to recite in a haunting voice, like synchronized puppets. Peter, pumpkin eater, had a wife, but couldn't keep her. He put her in a pumpkin shell, and there he kept her very well. Peter, pumpkin eater, had a pet and couldn't feed her. Caught a maid who had meant well. What became of her? No one can tell." Kath and Jess both clapped politely when they had finished, though Kath was disturbed by the poem. She'd never heard the rhyme before, and thinking of Sir Peter tightened her stomach. She looked at Hada, who was still clutching the brim of his hat against his stomach, tapping his fingers, impatient. She wondered if this happened every time he wanted to pass through the looking glass. If he gave up 5 minutes of his time to look at their drawings, listen to their tales, humor them as well as he could. He wasn't humoring them much now. But then, Kath knew it would drag on her after a while too. It was difficult to be polite when you wanted to run away. "Are you sure you wish to go?" asked Tilly the owl, cocking her head to one side. Kath kept expecting the masks to take on expressions, to smile or cry, but there was nothing but blankness about them. "Or do you wish to play?" said the fox. "We could fix you some warm treacle," added the raccoon. Jess shook his head. "We must go. But thank you for the poem." And for showing us your drawings? Fine, said the raccoon, sounding put out by the refusal of their hospitality. We'll open the maze for you. You'll want to go right. Right is always right, except when left is right. Naturally, do you remember the way, Hatta? Asked the owl. Hatta tipped his hat to her. Like the way to my own hat shop. Tilly cocked her head. Like a real owl with her humongous eyes. Your hat shop, she said, quite plainly, is on wheels. Don't get lost, Hatta, warned Lacey the fox. Don't lose yourself, Hatta, added Elsie from behind her raccoon mask. Or anyone else, added Tilly with a secretive laugh. Shall we draw you a map of the maze before you go? Hatta shook his head. I know the way. The girls nodded and spoke again in unison. Farewell then. So long. Good eve. Murderer. Martyr. Monarch. Mad. Kath shut her eyes, her skin writhing. She wanted to get away from them. She was suddenly as desperate to get away as she'd been to get here in the first place. She found Jest's hand and squeezed, and was grateful when he squeezed back. Then she heard the chirrup of 3 jingling joker's bells. She opened her eyes in surprise, but the girls and the bells were gone. The glen fell silent. Not a breath, not a breeze. The wall that had held the girls' drawings was gone too, opened wide to reveal the entrance to a hedge maze with walls that towered 3 times Kath's height. Hatta let out a weary sigh. Thank you, loves, he said, sounding truly grateful, as though he doubted each time if they would let him through or torment him forever. He approached the entrance to the maze without half as much bounce in his step as before. As he passed by Catherine, she heard him muttering beneath his breath, though if I go mad, we'll all know who's to blame for it. Kath wanted to smile, but her nerves were still frazzled. She followed behind Hatta Ann, thinking it would not do to be impolite. She whispered to the empty glen, thank you very much. Only once she had stepped past the first wall did a ghostly whisper, 3 ghoulish voices, brush across her earlobe. You are welcome, they said, Your Majesty.